Welcome to the Michael D. Show. I'm so glad you're here. We're so excited about our show today. We have some amazing guests. I'm your host, Michael D. Butler, and we are helping 1 million believers find their voice and go live weekly. Why are you doing that? Well, I realized that the content that is being streamed is the content that's being watched. People have cut the cord. They're not watching cable. They're watching their own on-demand television. And I used to tell my authors back in the 80s and back in the 90s that you want to think like a book publisher. And then in the 90s and the 2000s, about the Y2K mark, I started telling people you want to think like a movie producer. This right here has changed the industry. This iPhone, this smartphone, this Android you have in your pocket is so powerful. There are A-list movies. There are movies in Hollywood and that are streaming on Netflix and other platforms now that are being shot with an iPhone. So you have no excuse to not go live, to go live every week, to find your voice and to change a life. I'll never forget growing up on the farm in Oklahoma. I was playing baseball, playing catch with my brother in the backyard, and we spent hours out there. Kenny is 2 years older than me, and we just spent hours out there throwing the baseball, having a great time, and we're having conversations, have good conversations with my brother when we're playing baseball. He's teaching me how to throw the ball, and my dad comes up behind me, and he grabs me, picks me up. And I'm thinking I'm in trouble or something. He starts carrying me off. I can see his cowboy boots as I'm looking down and I'm seeing his boots. And I'm screaming, no, no. I'm about 7 years old, maybe 8 years old. And I'm thinking, I just want to play baseball with my brother. I want to play catch with my brother, Kenny. And all I can see is my dad's boots as he's carrying me off. I think he's going to take me to the house. I'm thinking, my mind's racing. What did I do? Am I in trouble? What have I done? I wasn't in trouble. You know what he did? He set me down on a brand new yellow bicycle. That's right. It was my birthday. He set me down on that bicycle. It had training wheels. It had a big banana seat on it. It had big handlebars. And I tell you, my very first bicycle. And I was so excited. And I just I give him a big hug and say thanks. And then I tear off down the driveway and out to the road. My dad had big plans for me. And listen, I've got big plans for you. And listen, your Father God has big plans for you. It's time to find your voice. And big media has died. Move over, big media. People are streaming content. And I'm going to help you find your voice. And you're going to love our two guests today. Our two guests today are amazing. We have Jim Cathcart. He's the past president of the National Speakers Association. He's a Hall of Fame speaker. He's had a successful speaking career for the last 45 years in multiple industries, and his speaking career has survived multiple economic downturns. You're going to be able to tune in and ask questions as you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Twitter, and everywhere you might be watching. Ask a question. Tell me where you're watching from. Type it into the chat. Type it into the stream and share. Ask a question of our guest. You know, we just finished the pandemic, and you know what? The pandemic was hard on a lot of people. A lot of businesses went out of business. We've got a financial expert here. She's a CPA and a bookkeeper. Her and her husband have a firm in Hartford, Connecticut. She's a best-selling author. Her name is Josette Hill. In her book is How to Improve Your Credit, How to Get AAA Credit. Get a AAA credit in 60 days or less. She's going to talk to us about what you can do to improve your credit, and she's a tax resolution specialist. So if you got yourself in trouble with the IRS during the pandemic, never fear, Josette Hill is here. And so I want to welcome into the studio today Josette Hill from Hartford, Connecticut, best-selling author of How to Improve Your Credit, AAA credit. How you doing today, Josette?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Get AAA credit in 60 days or less. Congratulations. And thank you, Josette, for being with us. We're great on the Michael D. Show. You know, a lot of people have been asking this question. We had Roy Snar, financial expert in Austin, Texas, on last week. And a lot of people just didn't have enough money at the end of the month going through the pandemic. If they, worked from home, they didn't have employees, they weren't able to take advantage of some of the PPP and different things. What would you say to somebody that wakes up here post pandemic and says, "Oh my gosh, my credit's gone from 700 to the low 600s"? What can you do to help them?
Wow, and that is exactly why I wrote this book, because this is what is happening right here, right now. So, one of the things that we want to remember is that we are perceived by the number that is on our credit score. And even though we are not that number, we are perceived that way. And so we want to make that number to the number that we want, right? So we have to do whatever it takes in our powers to make that number what we want, so that we can use credit, we can leverage credit to dig ourselves out of the hole that the pandemic has placed in our life, right? So we want to be able to use credit as a leverage to be able to take ourselves out, to
Now
be able.
you
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Josette, because you're an immigrant and you're from Jamaica, and I'm sure that you had to learn some things the hard way, right? So why don't you tell people that don't know your story and haven't read your book yet, get AAA credit in 60 days or less, kind of tell us a little snapshot of your story and why did you get into this business, this industry of helping people, and then did you get in it as a result of your story?
Absolutely. So I migrated from Jamaica just a few short years ago. And when I came here, I decided that, you know what, I am going to be an expert. I'm going to learn whatever it takes to get this American dream. Because when I was in Jamaica as a little kid, I always hear about America is the best place to be, and everyone is seeking after the American dream. So when I came here, like every other immigrant, I'm looking for this American dream. What is it? And how can I live this American dream? So, as we all start, with a little job here or there, and then with minimum wage jobs, one after the other, getting kicked out of one and then going to the other, I realized, well, what is this American dream then? And what is this that I've heard about? I mean, I come here, I'm working hard, I'm working 3 4 jobs, and I
Mhm.
still can't make ends meet. What is going on? Where's the American dream that I heard about? What is it? And what separates one set of people from the other? Why there is so many people that is successful and so many people that are becoming millionaires every single day, and then there are another set of people that is just living poverty after poverty after poverty, from one job to the next, from one location to the next, and can't and see any uh, end in sight. What separates one from the other? And so I went out on a journey to figure this thing out. One of
I
the things, and one of the things that I figured out is that some people have an understanding of finances and some people don't.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to be on the side of the persons who did not have a handle on their finances, because I wanted the American dream. And if it means that it's education or information that is going to set me apart, then I'm going to chase that. And
I
that's when I decided to go into the people business.
Now, oh, I love that. You decide to go into the people business. So you're in the service business. You and your husband have a business in Hartford, Connecticut, called
Absolutely.
JAH Financial Services. Tell us a little bit about what you do there to help
So
clients.
absolutely. So JAH Financial Services is in the business of changing lives. We started out simply as a tax practice. I was selling life insurance for some of the greatest, biggest life insurance companies out there. And I became one of the best sales agent, not just because I love selling life insurance, but because I love people and I genuinely wanted to help. So I was always going above and beyond, trying to help them not just cover their family, but also with a budget and also making sure that their taxes are done right. So I decided I was going to go into business for myself, and started studying accounting. So once I started studying accounting, I understand that everything that I thought I knew when it comes on to my finances was the opposite. I was like, well, everything I thought that I knew, I had to go out the door, and I had to relearn financial services. So, with that being said, I started studying from left to right to figure out how financial services work and how it will work into the lives of each individual. And then I realized as well that each individual is unique, and their financial responsibilities is different, and their financial obligations are different, and everything is different about an individual. So I had to learn to start seeing people as an individual and not just a number.
I love that. I love that. I want to mention some of the titles. I mean, you've got some great content here, and just looking at the book this morning, just incredible content. You go into the history of consumer credit. You talk about what is a credit card, how to use a credit card smart, and how not to use a credit card. You really go and you do a deep dive in showing people how the credit scoring works, and talking about how they can improve their credit history. But you also talk about payments. You talk about payment history. What's the biggest takeaway you give? Because I know you speak everywhere, you're doing interviews everywhere. You talk about credit utilization, how to dispute when there's fraud on your credit report, how to get into the 800s with your credit score. Kind of give us, what do you tell people that they can start doing today to improve their credit score?
Well, one of the main thing is you got to look at the numbers. A lot of times we're just afraid to look at our credit score, and we just don't want to see it. We don't want to face it. But you have to monitor your credit, right? Every time something pops up on it, figure out and identify what it is, and make sure you know what it is. Once you know that number, then you got to go to work on improving those numbers. There's tons of tips in the book that will tell you how to improve those numbers, whether you're going to delete negative items or you're going to create good and better accounts to improve those numbers. So my biggest takeaway is basically to watch the numbers on a daily basis. Make sure you have the credit alert so you can see what's going on all the time, and then monitor those numbers.
Now,
Raise
which one do you recommend? Do you recommend Credit Karma or doing Experian directly with the app, or which one is the best one to look at?
The best one that I would recommend is Experian,
Okay.
because I find that it to be much more accurate than Credit Karma. That's my personal preference. Not to say that you can't use Credit Karma, absolutely, because looking at Credit Karma is better than looking at nothing at all, because it will also help you to pay attention to the numbers, and you
So
must pay
Experian
attention.
is actually a credit bureau, whereas Credit Karma is probably trying to sell you credit card offers, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. This is really great. Now, talk to me a little bit about tax remedy. One thing you do in your practice is not just bookkeeping and CPA work for taxes for businesses and individuals, but also this tax. What did you call it? People are in tax
Tax
trouble.
So it's tax resolution, and
Okay.
a lot of time we get ourselves in trouble with the IRS because of not paying attention to how much taxes that we paid or not paid, or
Mhm.
the deductions that we're taking or not taking, and so we fall behind in our tax obligation to the IRS. So what my firm does is a lot of tax resolution that
Mhm.
helps clients challenge the taxes that they may owe, or even ask the IRS for an offer in compromise to help them as a tax relief, to help them ease the burden of taxes off of them, or to even set up a plan to clear their tax obligation. One of the things that we do here is educate clients how to not owe taxes by paying more into their taxes and taking the right deduction that will help them alleviate some of their tax bills. So that's where tax resolution comes in handy.
Wow. Well, this is so great. So you'll basically consult with a business owner at jahfinancialservices.com. They can call you, go to your website, set up an appointment, and you can consult them on tax credits. I was reminded the other day by one of my guests I was interviewing about the research credits. I mean, there's all kinds of credits for business owners. And
Absolutely.
so at jahfinancialservices.com, they can get on your calendar. They can ask questions, learn more. What type of business owners do you work with? Anybody, or is there a specific industry that you work with most?
So I love working with small business owners because my small business owners, they're looking for resources. They are just starting out. They're not certain how to build their business, launch their business. Some of them want to create other businesses. So what we do here at JAH Financial Services is to become that resource for them. We're helping them get business credit, business credit cards, business loans. We're also helping them to write grants so that their business can qualify for government funding. A lot of small business owners doesn't even realize that grants and funding is available to help them start up their business. You know, you can be a brand new company and still get a grant to start and launch your business. So we are educating our small business owners how to grow their business and even split off their business and become a franchise by utilizing credit, grants, and government opportunities. They're government contracting for everyone, but a lot of small business owners are not aware of how to apply to get those contracts.
Wow, that's just incredible. So anybody that's thinking of starting a company, I mean, there's so many tax advantages to starting your own company, right? I want to mention something else. You're part of our new book called Powerful Female Immigrants. You're in our third volume, telling your story of coming from Jamaica. And I just want to encourage anybody, if you're an immigrant and you have a story to tell, you can see if you qualify. Volume 3 is almost full, but powerfulfemaleimmigrants.com. Go check it out. See if it resonates with you. You can reach out to me and my team and see if there's still a spot left. 100% of the proceeds go to 1040impact.org that rescues our kids from human trafficking, where we're caring for 328 girls on a daily basis that we've rescued. Our full-time staff of 20 in Pakistan. We have 4 safe houses where we're raising these kids up ages 4 to 14 in a safe, structured home environment where we're caring for them on a daily basis, educating, feeding, and clothing. Last year, when the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan, we rescued 54 girls, and these were girls whose parents were so desperate they sold them to human traffickers. Fortunately, our team stepped up. Our donors, our corporate donors, and our grassroots givers stepped up, giving $10, $40, and $104 a month, made a difference in the lives of these girls for eternity. So we want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to you, Josette. We're going to be hearing a lot more from you. I know you're coming to Dallas to be in the Beyond Publishing studios. What's the
Absolutely.
final word you would give an immigrant that's where you were at 20 years ago, struggling, just trying to figure it out, just trying to make it happen? What advice would you give?
One of the main things that I did when I started understanding the purpose of having good credit is to decided to leverage credit. We can't use credit to buy groceries or buy things that is not an asset. If you use credit wisely, you can build a legacy for yourself and your family. And what I mean by that is to use credit to buy an asset. Can you imagine buying an asset with none of your own money, something you borrowed, and then you use that to purchase an asset that is going to now make money for you? There's so many credit cards out there that is zero interest for one full year. If you use that to purchase something that you can then turn around and gain interest from and then pay back that credit card before it starts to any interest at all, you've just created income for yourself and just created leverage. So
Well, you
I
talk
would
about it in
like,
your book. You talk about it in your
yes.
book. And I would encourage everybody, go to Amazon today, go to Barnes and Noble today. It's called Get AAA Credit in 60 Days or Less. This was a short interview. We didn't have time to really dive in. And, you see this third generation poverty, fourth generation. I'm ready. One of my friends and one of our clients, Dr. Sonia Stribling, says, if you didn't come from a wealthy family, let a wealthy family come from you. And I love that. And so when I have you back, I really want you to do a deep dive into this credit thing. And I want you to stick around because Jim Cathcart's going to join us here in just a second. He's a best-selling author. He's a top TEDx speaker. In fact, he has 45 years of experience being a top speaker in the world, where he's recognized globally. Not only has he won the prestigious Golden Gavel Award, but he's also a past president of the National Speakers Association. He's spoken dozens and dozens of times, I think 30 times, in China and in Taiwan and all over the world. And he succeeded in the speaking business, not just in good times, but during economic downturns. We had him speak recently to our Beyond Publishing authors at the Beyond Epic event in Dallas, Texas, where he was talking about his new book, What to Do When You Are the Speaker. Now, I know, Josette, that you are wanting to start speaking more, branching out there. Have you given your first talk yet, your first speech yet?
Yes, I have been talking on financial stages. We just did a talk with a radio station right here in Hartford, 102 in Hartford, Connecticut, about just manifesting your money. And we talk a lot about how financial manifestation comes about and what you can do in your small business to manifest money, because there's just so much abundance around us. So yes, I've absolutely started.
I love this, and the abundance mindset, it really is everywhere. It is everywhere. We go from, you look at Adam and Eve in the garden, and their blessing was they enjoyed their work, right? But then when the curse came, then they started to sweat, and it was a lot harder to make a living doing what they're doing. And I liken it to the metaphor of power tools. I remember growing up on the farm in Oklahoma, I would see these houses being built before the days of power tools. They would have what was called a barn raising, where they'd have like 30 or 40 of your neighbors would come and help lift the structure, pour the foundation, and then frame the house, and literally frame and sheetrock a house within 24 hours. Where you would go by one day, it was a field, just a pasture with a few cows. The next day you would drive by in the school bus as a 10-year-old boy, and you would notice that house has got a roof on it. They have put a fireplace. They bricked that house in literally like a week. And so leveraging the power tools. Jim, good to have you here. Good to have you back. Josette is starting to speak. She's starting to speak more. Your new book, What to Do When You Are the Speaker, is kind of the culmination of your life work. Welcome, Jim Cathcart. We introduced you as Hall of Fame speaker. You've been up in downturns in the economy over 45 years. You're one of the top 5 speakers in the world. And you've had so many outstanding endorsements, from Les Brown to Brian Tracy to Scott McCain, on this new book. How important is speaking for a business owner like Josette, just getting started in the speaking business? And how can your book help somebody like her that's just getting started with their speaking?
Well, when you're a powerful and an effective speaker, and I don't mean power in a forceful sense, but power in a persuasive sense, where people trust you and what you say carries weight with them, the world is open to you. When you're not, it's not. I told my son when he was little, he's a very outgoing boy, as you might figure from a professional speaker. Anyway, I told him, I said, Jim Jr., you're a natural leader. He said, I'm a born leader. I said, no, that would be somebody who was born into royalty. You're a natural leader. He said, what does that mean? I said, I've watched you with other kids. And when you talk, they all listen and they pay attention and they follow your lead. There's a responsibility that goes with that. He said, what do you mean? I said, if you do something that's going to cause them harm, then you're the problem. So when you're a persuasive person, you have power, but you also have duty. So take your role seriously and learn to be a better and better communicator. But the best way to communicate is focus on the people you're talking to and what good they can get from your message, not on you and how you're delivering your message.
Outstanding, Jim. Well, I just want to welcome everybody that's joining us here on the Michael D TV show. We meet every Tuesday. We go live on all of our social media channels. We have some amazing guests, and it's our goal at Michael D TV to help 1 million believers find their voice and go live weekly anywhere in the world. You know, traditional media has died, and online streaming is being viewed more than ABC, NBC, CBS, and all of cable combined. Now, Jim, when you started out 45 years ago as a speaker,
as a rosy-cheeked kid with lots of black hair,
did you have all the confidence that you do now when you take a stage? Kind of give us the evolution of Jim Cathcart.
Well, first off, my dad was a telephone repairman. Mom was a homemaker, and she took care of me and my little sister while Dad was on the road, usually for a week at a time as a lineman and then a repairman later. And my grandmother and grandfather lived with us, but my grandfather was a complete invalid, never spoke nor got out of bed for the last 7 years of his life from a stroke, completely disabled. So Mom had to take care of him in a hospital bed in our front bedroom, and my grandmother needed a lot of care. So Mom had to take care of her, and then us two kids. And Mom had not grown up knowing how to take care of kids. So she was overwhelmed and doing everything she could. Did a good job. Thank you, Mom. But boy, she was struggling. And I never expected anything big in my life. You know, she wanted me to be a good guy, a nice person, a good neighbor, maybe. But I was never inspired or encouraged to go for some big, dreamy, lofty goal. And then years later, when I got married, 1970, after a year or so, when we had Jim Jr., I was thinking, you know, I'd like to get involved in the community, but I don't know how. And I'd never been to a Lions or Rotary or Optimist meeting or anything like that. I had never had a management position. I'd always been a clerk or a gopher or a truck driver or a bill collector or something. Literally was a bill collector. And one day I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio, just a show like this, except shorter. It was called Our Changing World. And he was the dean of personal motivation on 900 stations all over the world. And that day he said, if you will spend 1 hour extra every day studying your chosen field, in 5 years or less, you'll be a national expert in that field. And I thought, well, the math works. An extra hour a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, 5 years, that's 1,250 hours on one topic. Yeah, that would make anybody, even me, pretty much of an expert on that topic. Well, what do I want to be an expert at? I didn't know. And then I joined the Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs. And the JCs at that time in the early 1970s were huge. That was the peak of the baby boom. So the JCs served young men up to age 40. Actually, at that time, age 36. And I was 26 when I joined. And I got really, really active. Now, the purpose of JCs, unlike Lions or Rotary or the others, is not the public service they do. It's the leadership training they do. So every time a JC's chapter would conduct a March of Dimes walkathon or a fundraising event for some injured athlete or whatever they were doing, it was done with a detailed written plan in advance. And afterwards, you would evaluate it and teach the other people in the chapter what you'd learned from it. So as we did civic projects, we learned leadership skills. And that's where I gave my first ever speech outside of a classroom. And
how long was that talk?
it was probably 5 minutes. It was a report. And I remember being embarrassed because I did it poorly. And then one day I was in charge of running the meeting because the president of our chapter was out of town. And we had a visiting officer from the state headquarters. And I was running the meeting and I turned it over to him and he spoke. And then we adjourned the meeting. He said, Jim, come here. He said, you guys never had any officer training for your chapter, did you? I said, what? I said, why? He said, Jim, you're a nice guy, but the way you run a meeting is awful. Let me give you some pointers. And after that, I gave 400 speeches at JC's meetings in 2 years.
400
in 2 years after work for no pay. And this was in little towns and log cabins and living rooms and fire stations and barber shops and standing up.
This is an amazing point, Jim, because you've given 3,500 paid professional speeches all over the world. Yeah. $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. Where I mean,
one of them $40,000.
$40,000. They're paying your first class airfare
to Macau, China.
Oh yeah. My goodness. So our mutual friend, our good friend who's with Jesus now, Zig Ziglar, said, I gave hundreds of free speeches before I ever got paid for one. So you literally, of your lifetime, if we do a snapshot of your 45, 50 years as a public speaker, first of all, the seed of this book was started right there in the JCs.
That's right.
But also you gave 10%, more than 10% of your first speeches were free. What if you
100% of my first speeches were free?
Oh yeah, 100% were free.
For nothing.
But what I'm saying is about $10 global speeches were free over the snapshot of your entire life. What if you would have given up on speech 397? You went home and told your wife and you said, Paula, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm just quitting. I'm not cut out. I'm just not cut out to be a speaker.
I keep this with me to keep me humble. I drove from Little Rock to Texarkana, Arkansas, Texas. It's right on the state line. Back in 1974, while I was in the JCs, and I participated in the first ever speech competition that I had ever been in. And I don't know if you can read this. It doesn't matter. I'll read it to you. It says, third place, 1974, JC's 4 States Leadership Training Seminar, third place speaker. So that was me. Then years later, the Cathcart Award.
The most prestigious speaking award in the world.
Yep. Named after the founder of the National Speakers Association, Cathcart Robert. I got that in 1993. And Cathcart, like Zig Ziglar, was a good friend of mine.
Wow. 1993. So, Jim, the projection of your, I mean, to kind of put it in perspective, you're in an airport once, and this speaker that nobody had heard of by the name of Les Brown came up to you, and he confided in you because he knew who you was, and he told you he was about to go deliver his first speech. Roll back the clock into this moment. This is like when we come out with your movie in a few years, this will be like the movie trailer chapter.
There you go.
Of you getting third place, and then of you having Les Brown come. And what did he tell you that day?
Les was on a shuttle going to the airport, and I was seated, and he was standing. It was packed. He was holding on to one of those loops, and we were all there because of the National Speakers Association convention. And so there were hundreds and hundreds of speakers at that meeting. So we're shuttling to the airport, and he said, excuse me, you're Jim Cathcart, aren't you? And I said, well, I try to be. And he laughed. And he said, I'm Les Brown, and I'm going to be a famous motivational speaker. I said, well, good for you. I said, where are you going right now? He said, I'm going to my first paid gig. Because he had spoken many, many times, and he'd been on the radio and done lots of things, but he hadn't been a paid speaker up to that point.
Did you know who he was at that moment?
Oh, heavens no. Nobody knew who he was.
But he knew who you were.
He knew who I was because
he listened to some of your Earl Nightingale tapes or what?
I don't know how he knew me exactly, but I was very visible in the National Speakers Association.
Were you the president by then?
I had been the president. I was
Oh, I
president
see.
in 1988 and 89. And I think this was, I'm not sure what year this was. It was a
My
few
graduation
years.
from Bible college was in '88.
Yeah,
So
that was amazing. And Brian Tracy, I knew Brian when he still lived in Canada. And one day he said, excuse me, he said, that speech you just gave was very good. Could I come to La Jolla, California, where I was living at the time, San Diego? Could I come there and meet with you because I'm thinking about moving to California? And I said, sure. So he came to La Jolla. And at the time I had a partner, Dr. Tony Alessandra, who's still my best friend today, but not my partner anymore. And we met with Brian at lunch. And Brian said, so what's it like working and doing business in California versus Canada? And we answered his questions. And shortly thereafter, he moved and he became a U.S. citizen. He even ran for governor of California at one point.
Very, very exciting, very exciting. And so did Les Brown's son. We have amazing connections. My uncle lived in La Jolla for about 60 years, and he was a graduate of Dale Carnegie's course and won a prestigious Dale Carnegie Award as a speaker, who also worked for the mayor in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's how he got into politics and met Nixon and met five.
Who was the mayor in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Oh, that you're going to take me down a history lesson.
Bill Morris?
It was before Roger Randall. I'll go back and listen to some of my uncle's voicemails.
Well,
my
Bill Morris was the mayor.
It was not Phil.
And he went to work for the Tulsa Agency of Mass Mutual Life Insurance, Joe Willard, general agent. Joe hired me from the JC's national headquarters. He hired me into his agency as a sales coach and mentor to his agents and a confidant for him. And that launched my speaking career in 1976, 77. And years later, like 30 years later, I called Joe and I said, Joe, I'm doing a lot of speaking in China, and I would like for you to, 40 years later, I said, I'd like for you to come with me, first class round trip ticket to China and Taiwan, all expenses paid on me.
Oh, outstanding.
And I took him and we had the time of our lives. But I was
able
Joe Willard, to do
Joe
a little bit of payback after 40 years since he helped me out.
And that was Joe Willard.
Joe Willard. And the mayor of Tulsa went to work for him as an agent. And I was Bill Morris's sales coach.
Well, there's so many lives you really touch. I don't think you're going to realize until you get to heaven. Talk to me a little bit about this book, what to do when you are the speaker, because literally you tell stories in the book about, I mean, you're handed the microphone and you've got to fill 3 hours because somebody was in a car wreck. And then we're going to go to some questions. We're getting some questions and I'll fill you in on one of them. Let's see. Entrepreneurship Academy asked the question, what is the first step to becoming a paid professional speaker? So maybe address that and then just some of the nuts and bolts content.
Well, let me explain the nature of the book. Okay. Almost all books on speaking, many of which I have right here behind me from friends of mine, colleagues, are about speaking. Well, duh. Okay. But they're about how to write and deliver a speech. Well, mine is about how to be a speaker. So in this book, What to Do When You're the Speaker, it talks about how do you write and deliver a speech, but it also talks about what do you do literally when the room catches on fire and you're the only one with a microphone and there's 700 people whose lives depend on what they do next. What do you do when you're the speaker and the meeting planner says, hey, Michael, our previous speaker's still going and he should have ended 30 minutes ago. Your 1 hour talk that you were going to do, that keynote, could you do it in 11 minutes? You know, I've had these things happen to me. What do you do when you're the speaker and someone in your audience has a medical emergency?
Oh my.
Again, you're the only one with a microphone, right? Yep. What do you do when all the electricity goes out and 2 weeks ago was 9/11? Wow. And everyone says, no, you know, because they're afraid that they've been attacked. And you're the speaker giving a speech during that time. You know, what do you do when you're the speaker and you can't get to the meeting on time or whatever? You know, that's the nature of this book.
Mhm.
And so it's a real practical book. What is the first thing you do? First thing you do is you make a commitment to start speaking for fee. Now, before you make that commitment, you need to figure out, what do I have to say that's worth paying to hear? Not, can I give a good speech? Most anybody can give a good speech if all the circumstances are friendly. Can you give a good speech when you're tired, when you're sick, when you threw up all night and now you've got your suit on and you're walking down to the meeting room, you're white as a sheet, and you're on for an hour in about 15 minutes, and the audience is angry because they just got chewed out by the CEO, and he says, now here's a motivational speaker, maybe he can do something with you. I've literally had all these things happen. So when you say, I'm ready to be a paid speaker, realize the rules change. You can no longer just deliver good data. You can no longer just tell stories. You've got to make it worth paying for
Mhm.
to be in your audience.
That's really powerful. You were speaking recently at one of our events in Dallas to a lot of our authors from around the world. That was so much fun. We had authors there from Brussels, Belgium, from New Zealand, and everywhere all over the country, from stand-up comedians that were transitioning into motivational speakers. And you gave some really good advice there. You even talked about how to thrive in the online Zoom world post-pandemic. So give us some nuts and bolts. And I know you're speaking everywhere and every day almost. One thing that's really impressed me about what you've done is you've continually learned. You've continually educated yourself. You've stayed on the front end. You're always reading books. In fact, you've got a book signing coming up June the 1st.
Yes.
So tell us a little more. The question comes in, what's the first step? So we start telling people, we decide, I want to be a paid professional speaker. We join the National Speakers Association, like you've done.
Or you just attend a chapter meeting in your region, your state or city of the National Speakers Association, or you enroll in a speakers academy through the National Speakers Association, or you sign up with me for my professional presentations course. I do private speech coaching coupled with a video series of 28 videos that I have. And I just did a mailing yesterday. It said book, video course, and private speech coaching. And that's something that I do. So, it's a service I provide for other people. And
it's the best way for people to follow up with you on that is jimcathcart.com, or what's the best URL for them to?
Yeah, they could just go to jim@cathcart.com and send me an email.
Okay.
And I'll send them information on that. They can also go to jimcathcart.com, which is the website for my digital business card. And it's got all kinds of information about my books, my videos, my coaching program, and mentorship. I lead a program called the Experts Academy for people who are going pro. That's something they can enroll in for a while or for ongoing if they want.
Tell me if I got this right, Jim. It's right there. Did I spell that correctly?
No, Cathcart is CATHCART. And on that typing, you had an extra R in there.
Okay, but apart from that, the email was correct once I correct the spelling.
I think so. Let's look.
Let's look at that again. Boom. There we go.
Jim@jimcathcart.com. I would drop the second Jim. Just Jim@cathcart.com will get you straight to me. Anything else has to be forwarded around a little loop.
Yeah, we don't want to loop them. We want the direct connection to Jim.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got some great, our friend Kate Hancock said some beautiful things about you. She's one of your students. She went through your speaker training and coaching program, and now she's speaking for major corporate sponsors.
That's the thing. I've had a number of big name speakers who have come to me for speech coaching, not because they couldn't give a speech well, but because they wanted to know the things that I know and help take some of the fear away from situations that they hadn't yet experienced, but they knew I had. And I've had people call me. One of the people that we've had endorsed this book called me 2 days ago from the French Riviera, woohoo,
Yeah.
and said, I'm in Monaco. I'm speaking tomorrow, and it's a big, big deal, and I'm terrified. And I said, why are you terrified? And she said, well, I've been traveling all day, 19 hours in a plane, and I'm worn out, and I'm thinking about tomorrow, and I'm trying to get everything right. And I said, well, first off, chill. As soon as you get some sleep, about half of your fear is going to go away. And then
Yep.
the second half, let's talk about that. I said, you were hired because they had heard you before, and they already respect and admire you. So you're not hired for having a perfect tomorrow. You're hired for having a good yesterday.
Yep.
So build on yesterday and just focus your attention on them and do what you already know to do, and they will be happy that they hired you.
Yes.
She said, thank you. Fear has shrunken, and I'm
Yes.
fine.
That right there. I mean, that right there. And so they get that with you. They get that with you. I know I've availed myself of you being a part of your mastermind, being a part
It's
of your
been great
growing
having you in there.
I mean, I've met so many amazing people. You actually brought everybody together from Canada and around the U.S. In Austin recently,
Yep.
and we just some of the stuff that we uncovered there and the joint venture partnerships that were created. I know I'm doing business with a lot of your people in the group. They're doing business with me, and we've created some incredible wins. Jim, you're launching your book June 1, hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook. It's available everywhere. You're actually going to have hardcovers there to sign and to sell. Tell us a little bit about how did you get this book signing? A lot of new authors are saying, how does Jim do it? He launches a book, it goes bestseller.
It's interesting. I got turned down first. I went to 2 Barnes and Noble stores that are near me, and the first one is the bigger one. And I said, I'd like to have a book signing for my new book that's coming out. It's my 25th book. And I'd never dealt with that Barnes and Noble before, so they didn't know me. And for that matter, I only moved to Texas 3 years ago. So I was in California previously. And I said, so I want to do a book signing, and I have a bigger idea if you're interested. I said, I'm a member of the National Speakers Association, and there are several others here in this region. And I could put together an assembly of maybe 8 or 10 current authors who are motivational speakers and business speakers. And we could have an autograph festival at your store. And they said, wow, it's a great idea, but that's a lot of work. I said, no, we'll do all the work. All you've got to do is make the store available that day and announce it. And they said, oh, well, what date are you looking at? And I told them June 1st, and they said, no, book solid. I said, okay. So I called another one a few miles the other direction, and they said, love to have you, but we can't handle multiple authors that day. It'll have to be just you. So I'm doing it just me, but I'm hoping my colleagues will come and I'll get to shine a little spotlight on them while I'm there.
Well, you know what? You did not take no for an answer. You've been a sales trainer, a master sales trainer, and a coach training sales practitioners for decades. And so I applaud you on that. They missed out, but now that they have a relationship, you've got this amazing networking concept. And I've never seen it. I mean, I guess in theory, I've seen people do it, but your theory of joining the #1 country club in the region, maybe touch on that for 90 seconds. Tell us the strategy and how many millions of dollars that's paid you over the years.
Isn't that the truth? When I was in California, we moved from La Jolla, which is a very beautiful resort community in San Diego. After 20 years, our grandson was born on the other side of LA, up in Santa Barbara. So we wanted to move north of LA, and we chose Thousand Oaks because our friend Scott McCain, the speaker, was there. And so we moved to Thousand Oaks, and I found out that they had 2 country clubs, one called North Ranch and one called the Sherwood Country Club. And Sherwood, it turned out, was a big whoop-de-doo, big deal country club that hosted Tiger Woods' World Challenge golf tournament every year. Wow. And it was ungodly numbers to join as a golf member, like $300,000 to join as a golf member. Well, luckily, I don't play golf. And so we joined as social members. And I went to the club and I said to the general manager, I don't want to do the social dance, hi, how are you? Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And have to do that to meet everybody. I'm a professional speaker and author, and I'm really well connected around the world. I can bring in a series of very substantial people and host a discussion salon in your parlor off of the main entrance. And I'll do that once every month or so if you will cater it and promote it to the membership. And they said, oh, that'd be wonderful. So they did. And I did 39 of those over a 4 or 5 year period. And we would have 20 to 30 people at a time get together for those discussions. And I brought in the commander of the space shuttle, astronaut. I brought in celebrities, authors, entertainers from Hollywood. I brought in philosophers, all kinds of amazing people, one at a time, and just hosted a parlor discussion in the round of important ideas. And it became the popular thing, and everybody at Sherwood Country Club knew me.
Beautiful,
the staff
beautiful.
knew everybody.
Well, and you're a corporate speaker. You speak all over the world on corporate culture and sales leadership, and your best-selling books, The Acorn Principle. You're launching your 25th book here, June 1st, What to Do When You Are the Speaker. Oh my gosh. Every pastor graduating from seminary, every startup company, every company going public. I mean, the difference between getting your company funded, the difference between $1 billion company and a measly $100 million company is Jim Cathcart's book, What to Do When You Are the Speaker.
Let me add one more item. When I moved to Sherwood Country Club, Thousand Oaks, we joined as social members. And one night I was there. I told Paula, I said, let's go to the country club for this dinner. And she said, we don't know anybody. I said, that's why I want to go. And so we went, and this guy in the serving line, it was a buffet, he looked over at me and he said, are you that motivational speaker? I said, you mean the one featured in the Acorn, the local newspaper? How convenient it was named the Acorn. He said, yeah, that one. I said, that's me. He said, well, listen, my colleague is the chairman of the Boys and Girls Clubs in this region. And he's going to be making a presentation to the city council pretty soon. And if he gets it right, we get $1 million. Would you be willing to coach him for his speech? And I said, sure. So he came over to my house and we sat out by the pool in the backyard, and I walked through his speech with him and gave him some suggestions. And a couple of weeks later, he called me and he said, Jim, it worked. I've got $1 million.
Wow.
He said, oh, you won. I said, no, you don't owe me anything. He said, no, I want to take you to dinner. So he took me to dinner. Well, that ended up with me serving 5 years on the Boys and Girls Club's board of directors and doing a bunch of other things and emceeing their banquets. But anyway, it was a wonderful relationship that started that way.
That is one of those success stories I love hearing, and that is so heartfelt and powerful. And Les Brown, we shared his story here. He's got some amazing things to say about the book. And What to Do When You Are the Speaker. Pre-buy it now. It's available now everywhere books are sold. And by the way, that country club networking thing, I think over time exponentially will pay you hundreds of millions of dollars. And I even think about the relationships, because you did the same thing in Austin. You basically duplicated that strategy. Our mastermind, you hosted it right there at the country club near
the University of Texas Country Club. Yeah, that's cool.
So Jim, as far as the advice, you're giving new speakers here and transitioning out of the pandemic. How important is it? You're a past president of National Speakers Association. You've coached hundreds and probably thousands. Would you say you've coached thousands of clients over the years on how to be a paid professional speaker?
I'd say hundreds on coaching, but I've addressed millions in person.
And I would say this book is going to open a lot of doors for you. And now that the world's opening back up because of the pandemic, the other thing that you're doing is not only coaching people in speaking everywhere. And by the way, I want to say taking care of your health. That's a big plus. We went hiking when we were with you there in the mastermind. Yeah. And at your age, I mean, you act like a 35
years old. Yeah.
I mean, 76, you're not huffing and puffing. You're climbing those trails and you're going for it. So as far as right now transitioning for somebody that's maybe they understand their message, they've picked a lane and they've got their keynote talk, they've talked to you about that. What do they do in 2023? What are the next 3 steps?
Well, first off, recognize that the purpose of a speech is to solve a problem, unless it's an entertaining speech, and then it's just solving a problem of not being entertained. So, you might be simply a storyteller and humorist. That's fine. Or you might be an inspirational speaker. But in any case, if you think of the purpose of it as problem solving, then the question number 1 is, what's their problem? What do they need? How can I help? Right? Is their problem fear? Is their problem confusion? Is their problem not knowing how, whatever it happens to be, not knowing how to sell, how to service customers better, how to lead, how to manage, how to understand human personality, whatever it is, think like a problem solver. And this is a public speech, by the way. Michael and I are addressing you in a public forum. Now, for you, it's 1-to-1 between us and you, or 1-to-2 in this case. That's always the case in a speech. When you stand before a group, every person in the audience is only looking at you, and they're listening to you. So for them, it's a 1-to-1 conversation. So take it that way. Treat it as a meaningful, personal message to each listener in your audience. And Dr. Kenneth McFarland was advising the first president of the National Speakers Association, Bill Gove. Gove was a young guy wanting to be a speaker full time. And he said, Dr. McFarland, what do I do? He said, you want to speak? Yes, sir. Then speak. He said, and? He said, no. Speak. In other words, get out there and give free speeches and give short speeches and long speeches and get plenty of mileage on the platform in front of other people. Beautiful. Delivering your message, because that's how it gets better and better and better and better.
Should we practice our speech for before friends and family? What's the pros and cons?
Anybody that's willing to listen and tell you the truth. When I say the truth, I don't mean being mean to you. I mean pointing out what works, pointing out what confused them, pointing out what they didn't understand, things like that. But it's really important that you watch you.
Yeah.
So get videos of yourself and audios of yourself and review them afterwards and reflect on what you meant to do, what you actually did, and how it worked. And then think of how you could do it better next time.
I always do it with a word of caution when I say people, friends, and family, because I say, you know what, there might be some emotional baggage there. You might have, if you have a brother or father or mother says, no, you always suck. I knew you wouldn't make it as a speaker. So just do that with a word of caution.
Now, if people run you down, then don't do what you do in front of them. If my primary topic, I see it in the footnotes here, is corporate safety, can I also speak about our AI? Of course. And here's how. Corporate safety is a combination of attitudes and behaviors, systems and circumstances. If you look at corporate safety from a mechanical point of view, it has to do with proper lighting, proper spacing between things, proper tools in place, so on and so forth. But corporate safety tends to be even more a reflection of individual attitudes and behaviors. If you're sloppy about how you do things or not particularly intentional about it, you'll have more accidents. You'll have more spoilage. You'll make more mistakes, right? If your attitude is off, if you're arrogant or if you're condescending or if you're highly judgmental or unfair to other people, if you're mean-spirited, if you're a pessimist and everything's always cloudy and not going to work, then that's going to show up on the job and corporate safety is going to suffer. What does artificial intelligence have to do with that? We're surrounded by artificial intelligence. This iPhone is filled with artificial intelligence. It's more sophisticated than the computers on the capsule that went to the moon.
Great answer, Jim. Thank you. We're out of time, friends. You've been listening to the Michael D. TV show, where we're helping 1 million believers find their voice and go live weekly. We've had our best-selling author, Jim Cathcart, launching his 25th book, What to Do When You Are the Speaker. So pre-buy it now everywhere. And Josette Hill, the financial advisor, expert, and credit repair specialist. You can reach out to both of our guests. They provided some generous offers. Grab their book. We'll be back every Tuesday right here on the Michael D. TV show with some more exciting guests next week. Don't you think it's time you share your story with the world? I do, because the world is waiting to hear your story. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you next week on the Michael D. TV show.
Ooh.